On today's episode of Speak Shame with Dr Connie.
The doctor came back and let me know I was pregnant and asked me what I wanted to do next. And without skipping a beat, really, I said that I wanted an abortion. And the doctor was like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, of course I am." I just want people to feel free and liberated in their choices and know that it's all okay and that other people's stigma is not for you to hold.
Hello, remarkable woman. I'm your host, Dr Connie, medical doctor, life coach, and survivor of sexual violence. And you're listening to Speak Shame, a collection of inspiring conversations with remarkable women who have faced and overcome adversity. By sharing their stories, my hope is that you may find strength, connection, and hope in your own journey, and that shame itself loses its power. So sit back, relax, and don't forget to follow the show. Joining me on this week's episode of Speak Shame is the remarkable Jessy Rosales. Commencing their advocacy journey in 2016, Jessy has been at the forefront of reproductive justice, dedicating their efforts to addressing community needs through local policy initiatives. A passionate and vocal activist, Jessy not only organised various communities to mobilise for reproductive justice legislation, but also utilised media platforms to amplify their message, contributing op-eds and interviews with journalists. Under Jessy's leadership, significant strides were made, culminating in the passage of Senate Bill 24, the nation's first abortion mandate. This groundbreaking legislation required the University of California and California State University to offer medication abortion services within their student medical systems. Jessy's impactful abortion storytelling played a pivotal role in this achievement, garnering recognition from esteemed entities such as the California State Assembly, State Senate, State Controller, and the 2019 Aud Lord Award bestowed by the Reproductive Justice Coalition in San Diego. Identifying as a queer Latinx activist, Jessy is committed to non-hierarchical systems of organising. Beyond this landmark victory, Jessy has continued to collaborate with various nonprofits and stakeholders, actively contributing to the implementation of reproductive justice policies at both state and national levels. So thank you so much, Jessy, for joining me here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. I am really inspired by your podcast. I will admit that I hadn't actually heard of the podcast until I got invited on, and the very concept of it, the episodes, the people that you've brought on, you yourself as the host are just such an inspiration, and I'm so honored to be here. I can't believe you see me on like the same caliber as all your guests and yourself, so I'm flattered. Thank you.
Jessy, you are remarkable. I mean, just reading that, I hope people understand as well why it's an absolute pleasure for me to have you here. So thank you so much for giving up your time. I really do appreciate it. And we're going to kick things off. So you may have heard then how I start off my episode with other guests. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for you. And I want to find out a bit more about you, but in a slightly different way. So my first question is, if your life story was turned into a book, could you describe for me what happens in chapter 1?
Ooh. I would say chapter 1 is the story of, and this is going way, way back. This is like the genesis of me, would be the story of a young child born to immigrant parents who is the eldest daughter who had to learn a lot about responsibility, growing up, taking care of the family, and learning how to navigate childhood and adult-like responsibilities, all the while in the back of their head questioning, why am I attracted to women? Why am I attracted to queer people? Why am I attracted to uh not cis men, but like forcing myself to get into it? Um, so I would say the first chapter of my life is a lot of me shedding away my childhood out of like familial obligations.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. And I wonder, that there'll probably be many people who are listening to this and can relate to your story. And I wonder if you could describe for me how that felt as a child, as a young person, to have those questions going through your mind. And it sounds like almost perhaps even suppressing that. How did that feel?
At the time, I just thought that maybe I was a more open-minded person. Like, I just thought that I was one of those straight women that are like, yeah, I would totally just I find women very beautiful and attractive, but, like, I think for femmes and for, like, people, assigned female at birth, it's very easy for us to just be like, it's so normal to tell your girlfriends that they're beautiful, that they're pretty. It's so normal to, like, be very touchy and, like, love on each other, and for that to be just how women behave. And I think for myself, it was really easy to keep suppressing any other idea that came with it. Like, if I felt nervous around other women in engaging in those kinds of lovey-dovey actions or talking to, um women in a particular way, I just was really able to brush it under the rug and be like, "Well, that's normal." And it wasn't until I was older and gained more language for what queerness is, where I, finally met, like, my first lesbian friend, finally met, more queer people, that I remember thinking to myself, like, "Wow, like, lesbians are so lucky." And, like, realizing that that's not, like, a straight thought later down the line, but I really didn't come to terms with my queerness until I was maybe in my 20s. So it was a really long journey, and I really tried to fit into that heteronormative mold for a really, really long time, and it was just really scary to think about engaging in, like, I don't know. I don't know what to call it. Myself, queer behavior, it was just really scary.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And as I said, I'm sure people listening to this episode will hear your story and will be like, I'm not alone. And I think that's what's so important about having these discussions, having these conversations, that people realize and hopefully don't feel isolated anymore. And with all the amazing work that you've done, I wonder if you could talk me through and talk the listeners through your journey from that point in your life to the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I think I was at a very pivotal moment of my undergraduate career. So I knew that for myself as like a first generation American, that having one degree probably isn't going to be enough to be competitive with my like white counterparts or peers. And so being the first one to go to college, it kind of came to me a little bit later after learning and understanding how the world works a little bit more, that I should probably get invested in extracurricular work in college. So I was already in my junior year or going into it, um, or I should say my third year of college. Um, and so that's when I found an organization that my friend was getting involved with, which is known as Planned Parenthood Generation Action. Um, Planned Parenthood is a federally funded slash also has many other funders out here in the United States and across the globe that focus on like STI testing, abortion, miscarriage, a very comprehensive and holistic reproductive and sexual health care center. And so I didn't know that they had like an advocacy branch. And so when I went to go to one of their community events, they were specifically honing in on the significance of having a Planned Parenthood for immigrant communities. And when they were talking about that, um, I really just saw my mother who immigrated here to the United States from El Salvador. And her journey was harrowing. Her life journey in El Salvador was also just terrible. And a lot of it centered around reproductive justice. For the listeners, this next part is going to be pretty heavy, but my mom went through 2 unwanted pregnancies in El Salvador because it is illegal to have an abortion there. And it is also, in some cases, can be illegal to have a miscarriage. And so it was a really frightening adolescence for my mom in terms of reproduction, um, and having forced pregnancies. And then coming here to the United States, there was a lot of freedom in having her first abortion. She had an abortion before I was born, and she had an abortion between me and my sister. So, ironically enough, this wasn't something that we talked about, but I kind of knew about her unwanted pregnancies at this point. So, being at this Planned Parenthood community group, I was just really inspired by what they were saying. I felt like I had a personal connection. And so I got involved doing a lot of community organizing work, just telling people about the significance of reproductive justice, defining it for people for the first time, and really honing in on local policies. Um, that being said, the next year, uh, Trump is our president for the first time. And that was a really heavy and looming feeling on our campus. And that really sparked people's apathy into action on my campus. And so we had a lot of momentum going on. Um, and then about around the same time, I am starting to feel sick. I'm starting to not be able to hold down my breakfast. I finally then go to the student health center on my campus, and I realize that I'm pregnant and I have no way of knowing how far along I was because at our student health centers at the time, we didn't have ultrasounds. So there was no way to date a pregnancy. And I, even though being on the birth control pill at that time, my periods were still irregular. So I couldn't really give anyone an answer as to when I could have gotten pregnant. Um, and I know that the theme of the podcast is to speak on shame. And when I was there, I already knew that if I ever ended up pregnant in my undergraduate career, that I would have an abortion. That was just a non-negotiable. I wanted to finish school without any interruption or added barriers, I should say. Um, and when I first went to the doctor and they gave me a pregnancy test, the doctor came back and let me know that I was pregnant and asked me what I wanted to do next. And without skipping a beat, really, I said that I wanted an abortion. And the doctor was like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, of course I am." And she was like pretty adamant. Like, she was like, you have other options. And I was like, I know. I mean, like, I know that at the time I'm doing all this organizing work and that I'm well equipped in this world. But yeah, it was like the first time that I'm dealing with like other people who are not students, who are not, for the first time ready to like make their mark on the world, right? So that was a really strange experience. And then from there, I received 3 different referrals to go get my abortion care outside of campus. And so the first place that I called, I tried to schedule an appointment and they say, we don't offer abortion services. And actually, we've talked to your university about this before, that they need to stop referring students to us because that is not a service that we have. Um, Really strange, really weird. I was like, okay, I'll move on to my second referral, try to call them to schedule an appointment. And they say, sure, you can have an appointment, but we're booked up. We're probably not going to see you for like another month and a half to get this procedure done. And at the time, I was okay with that. At least I knew I was going to have my abortion, but it meant that I had to live in what I felt needed to be a secret for about a month, month and a half. And from there, fast forward, and we're getting close to the appointment date. And they call me to let me know that my insurance cannot be used at their facility. And my understanding of getting these referrals is that everything would be okay and that I would be able to go to these places. And there was this understanding that I was on the student health insurance, and I was just confused. I didn't really understand why I would get a referral that I couldn't use. But I think in retrospect, our my alma mater does not have a comprehensive, or did not have a comprehensive and holistic approach to reproductive health care. And it was maybe an afterthought for them when they were thinking of what they could do with pregnant students who have unwanted pregnancies. And so it was a devastating blow, and I took some time to regroup. And at this point, I still have no idea how far along I am. And then I finally confide in a friend, and they were like, well, isn't it obvious? Like, you do all this work with Planned Parenthood. Why don't you go to a Planned Parenthood for an abortion? And I was just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know anything. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. And I thought I could only go to the places that I was referred to. And she was like, no, like I had a friend as well. And she went to Planned Parenthood, and, we're all in this, like, this student health insurance, but you could go elsewhere. And so that prompted me to make an appointment with Planned Parenthood. And they also had a bit of a wait time. I think it was like maybe another 3 weeks. Um, and from there, I mean, my experience there also wasn't the greatest, to be honest. And that just really lit the fire in me to be like, yeah, even the people who are providing these reproductive health services aren't doing enough. And also, why was it so complicated for me, someone who was born here, someone who speaks English, someone who is aware enough of the world to navigate the world? Why was it so complicated for me to get an abortion in a progressive state, the progressive state of California, where abortion is supposed to be easy, accessible, non-stigmatized, right? It was nothing of the sort. And so I ended up having a second trimester abortion. And it was, at the time, it was a really scary experience. It changed my life and it saved my life, but everything that I had to go through just didn't feel fair. And that really spoke to me when I heard of Senate Bill 24, which was directly addressing this issue that students had to navigate so much to get their health care. And I was able to speak on it on a very personal experience. And I think that is what led me pretty naturally into this role of like a lead testifier. And having had this experience of organizing my community, it also led me pretty naturally into the role of being like employed full time with this campaign and organizing the Southern California region and also teaching kids how to lobby and like take their power back. And all of it was very serendipitous. And or it is like what I took a difficult moment for myself and made it into something powerful. Um But yeah, I would say that is what has brought me or what brought me to the campaign. And now I actually work with family physicians and I teach them about reproductive justice, values, history, and I ensure that we do programmatic work that is aligned with reproductive justice values, which feels like a very big full circle moment to where I dealt with doctors that didn't have that sensitivity training, obviously. So that was a very long-winded way to explain where I'm at now.
Yes. Not long-winded at all. I think all of that was just the context of it, starting with your mum's story and then leading into your own experience working with Planned Parenthood, and then your experience of becoming pregnant and then trying to access healthcare in, as you say, a very progressive state. And again, this is why these conversations are so important, because for a lot of people, perhaps who don't live in America or don't live in California, they would think that, oh, well, you live in California, it should be fine to access it. So thank you for sharing the challenges that you went along the way, but then also how that led to the work that you're doing now, which is so inspiring. So thank you very much for that. And I wonder how your journey has then connected you with other people who have perhaps been in a similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful to having had this experience in working on the campaign. Working on the campaign led me to We Testify, which is an organization that gives abortion storytellers a home. And we connected over having similar experiences of, and especially the cohort that I was in at the time was Youth Testify. So to meet other young people who were also having their own struggle with their abortions or were trying to get abortions um, was really, I don't know how to describe it, but it felt like home. It felt very familiar. I felt very seen. And then even on the campaign and mobilizing other young students across California, hearing them or seeing them come to me afterwards and be like, this happened to me. This was my experience. And knowing that that's why they're here is that they've also had that experience. It's it's really heartbreaking that young people have to go through such a difficult thing where people don't seem to want to help you. They want to like get in our way to get the healthcare that we need. And that, yeah, that is infuriating, but it was also like really beautiful to have community and to feel seen and to connect and to let it out in front of each other and hold each other while we cried or like just felt empowered by it. And yeah, I have definitely met a lot of people, similar experiences for sure.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think that's so important. And it makes me think about that younger version of you. And you talked about how you were having to keep it a secret initially. And obviously you did eventually speak to a friend. I wonder what that was like, though, prior to speaking to your friend. How were you managing to get on with your day-to-day life with that secret?
Not great, I will admit. I was definitely depressed. And it was interesting because I think if it were somebody else that I was witnessing bearing the secret, I think I would have totally been so supportive and let them know that there's nothing to be ashamed of, that there's nothing to be scared of. But when it comes to myself, and maybe others can relate to this, maybe you yourself can relate to this too. When it comes to yourself, it's so much harder to be your own best friend and to be like that support that you need for yourself. But I definitely felt alone and I just wanted to hide. It was really uncomfortable holding a secret like that from my friends and not share with them what's happening. And it felt easier to just not see anybody. If I could just hide and not see anybody, then I don't have to live with the secret. And I was exhausted all the time from being pregnant, and none of my food was going down the same. So I just felt lethargic on every sense of the word. And it was not an ideal time to be pregnant, not only because I was a student, but because I was in the first year of taking my upper division courses, which are the more rigorous courses of your undergraduate career. And I completely failed that quarter, which is embarrassing for me to admit and embarrassing to have not been able to take action about it. And I, live with that on my transcript forever. And I'm like looking at going back to school and I'm like, oh my God, that's on my transcript and I can't change it. And I can't go back and say to my professors from like 8 years ago and say, hey, like I was actually really pregnant at the time. Could you, change it? It's there and it sucks. It's like living during that time, I didn't realize like how consequential it would be um to not allow myself to have the community that I think I should have had, and to not allow myself to speak the truth that I should have had. And I think that like the shame and the stigma originally didn't come from me. I think like it came from that first doctor. And then at the time I was dating a boy and he didn't want me to tell anybody because it was his secret too. And I think that's what really like created the shame and the stigma around it. Like, I was the Planned Parenthood girl on campus. I was like the one passing out condoms. Like, that wasn't my shame. That was other people's shame that I took on. And yeah, it was a really terrible time. I feel really sad for former Jessy who had to like go through that, who like didn't feel confident enough to be like, actually, no, like I'm the one holding this fetus, like I'm the one like who's gonna have to go through the abortion. This is my thing to deal with in the way that I want to. Um, but growing pains, I think, like not really understanding my boundaries quite yet. But yeah, it was a really, really difficult time and yeah, depressing
Yeah.
time, sure.
Yeah, yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. And as someone who was silenced by shame myself, having to feel like you're constantly keeping this secret really does impact day to day life. You're wearing a mask pretty much, and that in itself uses up energy. And I can only imagine when you're pregnant and not able to eat properly and all of that comes with it makes it so much harder. And the next question I was going to ask actually was about what advice would you give to someone who was going through that same experience, but perhaps you could answer it in a different way. in that, what advice would you give younger Jessy going through that experience?
Oh my gosh. I mean, to myself and to anyone, I guess I would say, like, and this is something I've learned in my organizing work, is that in my abortion storytelling work, is that you are the expert of your life and your own experience. Whatever you are feeling, take the time to discover what your feelings are telling you. Take the time to discover yourself, feel into your emotions, and learn from what your body is telling you. Learn from what your emotions are telling you. I think that, especially in the scope of reproductive justice, everything is centered around the control of someone with a uterus. And if I had kept that perspective of a reproductive justice lens, that this shame was being pushed onto me, the silence was being pushed onto me as someone who was the bearer of a potential child, and instead putting the onus on other people to say, like, I have nothing to be ashamed of. Like, abortions have been around since pregnancy has been around. You're embarrassed by it. That's on you. Like, I wish I would have taken the time to honor my own expertise. I was already doing this work beforehand, and I already was building people up to not have any stigma or shame around abortion or sex or STIs or what have you. And it was, if someone like me could easily fall into like shame and stigma, I can't imagine like someone else. So I beg younger Jessy, anyone, to just listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to your feelings, and know that, especially in a situation with when it comes to abortion or pregnancy, that it's so normal. Abortion is a part of family planning. Abortion is birth control by definition. Abortion has been around since pregnancies have been around. This is just like, this is just a part of it. And um, also, pregnancy is not a consequence of sex. It's like a potential outcome, but it's not a bad thing. Like, it's really not. So I just want people to feel free and liberated in their choices and know that it's all okay, and that other people's stigma is not for you to hold, it's not for you to own. And if you are feeling it, take the time to digest it. Where is it coming from? Why do you feel this way? Do you really feel this way, or do you feel pressure to feel this way? Um, yeah, that's that's what I would start with, at least.
Yeah, beautiful words. Thank you so much. I can imagine that there are so many people who are listening to this who really feel seen, really feel heard. And I'm sure they will take all of your lovely words on board there. And what you hope listeners who may or may not be going through a similar experience, what do you hope listeners will take away from your story?
Ooh, that is a big question. I guess I hope that people walk away with, I think, more empathy. For those who are maybe listening to this story and can't relate, at least like walking away with more empathy in that people have a myriad of circumstances and situations that can lend themselves into very troubling times, or very, in this case, a very troubling time that is heavily stigmatized. But you won't get the full picture of why this person is there. Um, and I think for anyone who can relate or who has experienced shame, um, understanding that shame and guilt are the two most difficult emotions to deal with in the human experience. and that oftentimes shame and guilt are actually our own. And getting comfortable with being uncomfortable with the shame and understanding where it comes from. Does it actually come from you? Is it coming from these external influences that are telling you that you should feel or think a certain way? I don't know. I can't decide that for you, but I think that once I myself got to sit down after the fact and really navigate like where that shame came from, I really began to understand the shame came from the doctor who asked me if I was sure that I wanted an abortion, that the shame came from when I was actually getting the procedure. I had a nurse say to me while she was getting my IV in, she said to me, you know, you made a big girl choice. So now you have to deal with the big girl consequences. And she said that because I'm really afraid of needles. So I was fidgeting and I was just like, wait, give me one more second before that IV goes into me. And that's how she responded. Um, the shame came from these external stereotypes. I don't know how common the stereotype exists um, everywhere else in the world, but here in the United States, we have a fairly large like Latinx, Latina immigrant community, and it's kind of a stereotype that younger Latina women will get pregnant at a young age, and that comes with its own jokes, bad stereotypes, nasty rumors. And so I felt like another stereotype, and then I had to really peel that back and be like, well, why am I buying into that trope or that stereotype? Like, where is that coming from? And why am I feeding into that nasty stereotype? When really, like, if you are of reproductive age, you can get pregnant, and it does not have to do with any kind of stereotype around Latinx people. So I really had to like sit there with my experiences and peel it back and recognize where I was letting other people influence me. And it's been a great experience in that I got to really kind of date myself, understand myself, and like take the time to discover where my true core values are. But that is not easy and it's not fun and it takes time. And at the same time, I encourage anyone and everyone who has experienced any kind of difficult situation like that to, I don't know, find peace, understand themselves, give themselves grace, and learn about themselves. I don't know if that's a good answer. It's not an easy or fun thing to do, but it's what I did, and I feel a lot better on the other side of it.
It's an amazing answer, Jessy. And as you were saying it, I was like, Jessy should write a book. It's to be a book of your life with all of this wonderful advice in there. And that leads me on as well to people being able to find other abortion storytellers. And I will definitely make sure that I put We Testify's social media handles in the show notes, because I think hearing your story and hearing the story of other abortion storytellers will be powerful for so many people. So I'll make sure that I do that.
Yeah. Yes, that would be awesome. And that is so sweet of you to say that I write a book. So yeah, it's like I definitely encourage other listeners to listen to other abortion storytellers. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like, yes, my abortion was difficult, but then we have other states across the United States that have their own particular circumstances and logistical nightmares and hurdles that are so unique to each state. And um, there are so many other abortion storytellers out there that yeah, hearing their stories also really put into perspective my experience as well. Um, and also listen to other abortion storytellers from across the globe. I know that the United States is kind of like this hot spot right now for everything terrible, to be honest. But I don't know, like I encourage people to also like listen to abortion storytellers from Latin America and those experiences, and El Salvador, where my mother is from and where my whole lineage is from, and um just get a deeper understanding of like how deep this reproductive control goes across the globe, and how important it is for people to say abortion with their whole chest and not feel any kind of fear or shame around it. Um, to really try to swing that Overton window back to a more normal place. Um, but yes, yes.
Such an important point there. And I really do think that you've hit the nail on the head. This is something that people experience globally, and the shame and the stigma around abortion as healthcare it is an issue, not just in America. You're absolutely right. Globally, it's an issue as well. And I will most certainly be speaking to other women, and I hope to share more stories. As we come to the end of this episode, I wonder if there's anything else that you think, I really wanted to talk about that. Um, let me know, let our listeners know.
I will say that destroying hope is a white supremacist tool to evoke fear and to make us all believe that things are hopeless, that we don't have any options, that we don't have any choices, is what they want us to believe. And we know, like, from ancestral knowledge, from ancestral wisdom, that when we work in community, beautiful things can happen. When we take back our power, beautiful things can happen. And that we are not caged by these stereotypes. We are not caged by how they want women or other gender minority folks to behave or not even exist. We are here, we are loud, we are proud, and that we're not going anywhere. And I just really want people to believe in themselves, believe in the power of community. And if I could say one thing is like find your cause and like really like stick with it. I'm sure that we are going to find our Venn diagram, that middle part of our Venn diagram soon. We are going to find where we overlap. You don't have to be the expert in everything to be able to make a change. Um, it was interesting. I was just talking about this with my close friend who is a Palestinian rights activist. And I've found my niche in like reproductive justice, but there's so much overlap there. And if you're an environmentalist, like we're going to find some overlap there. So just if I could leave the audience with one thing is I know times are rough. Times are scary. Times are yeah, I'm losing my ability to speak eloquently right now, but I just want people to feel empowered in who they are. Know yourself. Don't doubt yourself. You have power. You have power in community. And if you can get over shame, you can get over anything else in this world. And they can't take away our power. They can't take away our hope. Um, try as they might, but they won't. And I'm here to remind you that they can't and they won't. And I will be here on the front lines waiting with all of y'all.
I love that, Jessy. So empowering. Let us not lose hope. And those are beautiful, inspiring, empowering words that are such a great way to bring this episode to a close. And actually, one final question. I lied there when I said it was coming to a close. But if you had to name one remarkable woman who has inspired you, who would it be and why?
My mom. I know you all as listeners don't know her, but to drop some more like background on my mom, she is a Salvadorian woman who essentially grew up homeless. She had an alcoholic mother with no father. She, despite it all, like always, always has spoken highly of my grandmother, has always just had love for my grandmother, even though she was not the ideal caretaker. And my mom went through a lot of trauma and abuse in her life. And when she decided to have me, she knew that she didn't want to generate the same cycle of abuse. And I think um that's like so powerful of her too. She never like laid a hand on me, and she only raised me with love, and she doesn't have the tools that I do. Like I've been to therapy, like talk therapy, and have like learned so much about how to communicate in such a healthy way or to love in such a healthy way. And my mom just, she never had that, but she's broken so many generational curses just on her own, like intuition, I guess. She wanted me to have the childhood that she never did. She wanted me to be raised with like only love. And she built me into the most like self confident, with no doubts type of child. And I was not, yeah, I was not the child that like ever felt limited. I felt like and I still feel like I'm able to do anything if I set my mind to it. And that has a lot to do with my mom's parenting and, of course, my dad's parenting. But my mom, like, really, if y'all knew her story and like everything that she's been through and how she decided to raise me and how that's going to change our like family so much for like generations to come and how many curses she's broken, it is incredible to think about how she does that, and she just leads with love, and I think that has and empathy, and I think that is, like, what has inspired me to do the same in this movement work as well. And so my mom is, yeah, she is everything.
Oh, do you know what? On behalf of all of our listeners, we want to thank Jessy's mum. And I want to thank you as well, Jessy. Thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing. Thank you for sharing your story. Yes, big heart to you, Jessy, and your mum. And yeah, thank you so much for giving up your time to be here today to share your story.
Absolutely, thank you so much. I can't imagine, like, another person to be speaking about this with. I so inspired by you, I'm so honored to be here, and this has been amazing. Thank you so much for everything, giving me the space to chat with you, to meet you. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Speak Shame with Dr. Connie Corrali. And thank you so much to Jessy Rosales for being my guest on this week's show. Please take a look at the show notes for information on We Testify social media handles so that you can connect with them. If you'd like to join the community, head over to @Dr. Connie Corrali on Instagram. If you're a remarkable woman who has been silenced by shame and you're ready to reclaim your voice, then join me at my next free Shame Resilience workshop. You'll find the booking link in the show notes. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get a new episode every other Thursday. Until next time, take care.